Welcome in, everyone, to a Memorial Day edition of Flyover Footy. And unfortunately, we have another fallout to look at a loss. Santi, what you know? What do we say? When we jumped on just a little bit ago off air, we just sighed, and what more can you say at this point?
Yeah, it's been a really rough streak, and I don't know what else to say. I think at some point the team is gonna get out of it, but it may be too late.
Every team gets out of it. I mean, you really can't expect there to be just this nonstop winless streak over the course of the season. I mean, even the Galaxy, like they're going to get out of that too. Like we are going to get out of this at some point.
Hey, City and Galaxy play June 14.
So something has to give. Is that your thing?
Yes.
Something has to give with these two teams on June 14th. So question is, will Olaf Melberg still be in charge of St. Louis City come June 14th? And if so, why? Because we haven't seen a single thing that is you can hang your hat on in the past month, because we're as Stu pointed out to us earlier on our DMs, the month of May, 6 games, we're going to talk about it. 5 games are in the books and we have 1 point to show for it. So what are you possibly seeing that gives you some semblance of confidence that something can be turned around under Olaf Melberg?
Yeah, hard to tell. You can say yesterday the team created chances and for moments it looked okay, but if you don't finish those chances, then you have a player like Darren Yappy. If you give them a space, they they cash in, and that's what happened.
The crazy thing is, a player like Darren Yappy, I don't think of Darren Yappy as having that much more quality, or really any more quality than who we have on our team. Hartle, Toyshirt, Klaus, even Ostrak, like, those kinds of players. Yappy's good, and he's definitely found success this season, arguably
Hmm.
much more success than any one of our individual attackers. But when it comes
True.
to quality, I don't think of him as on a different level, which is probably the most frustrating thing, because that goal he scored was just tremendous individual work to take the space he was afforded. And
Hmm.
I don't even think the pass was to him, to be honest. I,
No.
I think I think the pass was to the other Bassett brother.
Yeah, but he got it and
Yeah.
with his back to the goal and had enough space to shoot.
Yeah, but we'll get into it all. It's probably going to be a little bit of an abbreviated fallout, depending on how much we rant, just because there's only so much you can say about this kind of game. But you ready to get going, Santi?
Yep.
All right, everybody's got their coffee. We'll get going with the pod. Welcome in, everyone, to Flyover Footy. My name is Matt Baker, joined as always by my friend in soccer, Santiago Beltran, for another fallout and another look at a St. Louis loss. 1-0 this time to the Colorado Rapids in an extended match, thanks to a massive weather delay. But Santi, we survived the weather at least. We survived the delay. We didn't get much sleep, but how are you doing this day after match day?
Doing great, Matt. Obviously, a little concerned because the team didn't score, another loss in a play that you could say, hey, the team could have done better there. But in the end, Colorado scored and City couldn't create enough chances on the second half to tie the game. So it is another loss. The winless streak continues. And as you were saying, the month of May had 6 games, 5 of them had gone by, and just 1 point to show for.
Not a great stretch. Let's dive right into it. There's not a whole lot of excitement to talk about, but we're going to go through our starting 11. We're going to go through some of the moments of the game that, are the important takeaways. And then we'll go through our actual takeaways from the game, because there were moments that we could have scored. There were some opportunities that we had. Both sides had decent opportunities here and there. It wasn't like our attack was anemic in a lack of anything generated. We did have some moments that we could have scored, especially one in the first half that we will cover. And then we'll look at, where do we go from here? So starting with the starting 11, like we usually do, it was Roman Berkey back in net, Kyle Hebert, Timo Baumgartel, and Josh Yarrow, our fearless trio that just can't seem to get off the field. Conrad Wallem was our left wing back with this one. JGR and Chris Durkin are central midfielders. Akil Watts back joining that fearless trio on the back line at the right wing back spot. Marcel Hartl, Cedric Teuchert, and Klaus are consistent front three. Now, there's a lot of consistency that's going in this lineup, and there's a lot of tongue in cheek that I give with this group because of how consistent Olaf has been with this most of this starting lineup, and how consistent our performances have been really poor. So this was more of a 3-4-2-1. It had the three center backs. It had Wallem as the left wing back. It had Watts as the right wing back. JGR was one of JGR and Durkin are basically the differences from a few weeks ago. Health, fitness, form. That's the reason why we have this different center mid duo. But from the back line and the front attackers, a lot of it is the same. Now, Marcel Hartl had a little bit more of an advanced role in this one, oftentimes pushing to the left of Klaus in more of a 3-4-3, along with Cedric Teuchert pushing up as well. The bench with this game looked like the bench on Wednesday, more or less. Salio, Jean de Silva, Simon Betcher, Thomas Ostrak, Jay Reed, Ben Lunt, Michael Wenzel, and Joey Zielinski. And in appearance order, that was as well. The only other thing I'll note on this starting 11, outside of JGR having his third straight start, which, if you're looking for a bright spot on this team, JGR is probably a good place to start and maybe start and stop because we've been talking about JGR for so long. We've been talking about wanting to see more JGR, using the U22 spots. This is, and it's hilarious to note. I'm not sure a lot of people pick up on this in the just despair of this game, but our midfield was a U22 midfield. So if we're talking about playing and signing U22s, this is a great example of playing and signing and playing U22s. JGR and Chris Durkin are our current two U22 players, both of them starting at central midfield. We're now getting what we kind of hope to see from JGR. I have not seen a single thing that I'm concerned about with JGR at central midfield, though I'm starting to want to see more of him at center back. I will admit to that. He said post-game JGR did that this was his first time in his career playing 3 matches in a week. And so given his offseason surgery, given his illness in preseason, this is him getting up and running. Took a while, but he's here. Now, the other thing to note regarding this starting 11 is who wasn't here, namely Edu Leuven, Rasmus Alm, those kinds of players who saw minutes for City 2 on Friday. I talked on social media about the I would say conversation, Santi, around Edu Leuven, and Edu Leuven 90 plus minutes for City 2 on Friday in their I think it was a 6-3 win, and not traveling with the team. We're not going to get into. There's not much to get into with Eddie Leuven on this one, but this is not something to criticize the front office, the coaching staff on. This is something to enjoy Eddie Leuven being on the field, and whatever form that may take right now, that's what we get. This is bigger than soccer. This is something that has nothing to do with tactics, nothing to do with health and availability in that front. And so this is when we see Edu Leuven. If we see him next week against San Jose at home for City, fantastic. Let's ride with it. But there's plenty of other things to criticize: ownership, front office, coaching staff, especially when it comes to Edu Leuven, or when it comes to the on-the-field performance. Edu Leuven is not one of those things to criticize. Wanted to get that out right off the bat because a lot of the things we're going to talk about do relate to availability at some point. So what did you make of the starting 11? Any notes and anything else?
Well, it was pretty much the same starting 11, similar to what we have been using, and the results are the same. At some point, if you want to turn things around, you may want to see some changes in some positions. I was looking forward to maybe seeing Joey Zielinski start in that right wing back spot, but it was Akil Watts again. And as you were saying, it's good to see JGR getting another start, finally getting minutes. It looks like every game he's more comfortable out there, and he could be an answer at that center mid position. And I think I had said it before in previous shows, when the team was lacking a central midfielder, like that central midfielder could be in your roster and you are not using it. And JGR showing that I could have been right.
Absolutely. And this speaks to Olaf saying a few weeks ago he didn't have any central midfield depth, and the impact that was having in especially in the second half in the build when guys like Leuven, Morales, and Durkin were all out. So this is fantastic to see. Before we get into our big thoughts, Santi, let's just run through this game. Let's talk about some of the highlights because there are a few that we need to talk about, and a few that really take the pressure, not pressure, take the focus off of Olaf Melberg, take him out of the crosshairs for a moment and put it squarely on the actual players. So this had a huge weather delay. That has to be said right off the bat. We played about six plus minutes, and then there was around a 90-minute weather delay. So this game didn't kick off in earnest until 10:20 p.m. Central Time. It was the latest game on the slate Saturday by far. Didn't finish until after midnight. And so the players were sitting in the locker room for about 90 minutes or so in between the 6 minutes and the rest that was played. Now, both teams sat, so it's not an excuse for either side, but it is what it is as far as the performances, as far as what we saw on the field coming out. They had a little bit of a warm up, and then they got going. City came out strong after the delay. 2 shots at 12 and 13 by Klaus and Timo Baumgartel that accounted for a decent chunk of our expected goals. So decent opportunities. Olaf was seemingly happy with how the team came out post break when he had his comments post game. And then you had a couple opportunities there around the 30 to 40 minute mark that probably leave their stamp on this game as much as the goal that was scored by Colorado. Klaus at 32 had a great chance. It was a rare through ball played by Marcel Hartl. Klaus held it up, so he didn't play the through ball into goal. He played the through ball, held it up, turned, and then shot. That was the first real opportunity that I remember saying, this one might come back to bite us. And it was really difficult angle. It was a difficult shot. So no shade to Klaus for this one. It was a really difficult chance, but I think this one ended up being one of those you look back on and say, oh, if he had just been a little more accurate on that, the entire game would have changed. But we didn't have too much time to evaluate that or to stew on that because at 37 minutes, the non-play of the game occurred. And for those on our live stream, we're going to take a look at that one. Cedric Teuchert, in a buildup that was quick happening around 36 minutes, the ball was played over the top by City. It was gathered up at midfield by Klaus, and then it was played straight through to Cedric Teuchert. Cedric Teuchert, high pressed, had all day to himself, 1v1 with the keeper, and held the ball too long. He held the ball too long. He was too indecisive, and it just didn't work. Santi, what do you make of this miss by Cedric Teuchert?
That was the play of the game. That could have changed the game completely. And as you know, when you don't score, you get scored on, and that's what Colorado did a few minutes later. But yeah, he had a space, he had time. If you look at the replay, you can see he's looking at when he's running, he's looking at the keeper. And yeah, you can say he could have done this, done that, go to the other side, try to go around the keeper. At the end, he didn't do it. But it's unfortunate because it's his second miss, big miss in 2 games. Happened also against Minnesota when the game was 2-1 and could have been the goal that could have put away the game. So it's unfortunate. And yeah, strikers go to bad streaks where they don't score, miss. Eventually, they get back into it. But it's too bad that it happened back to Cedric Teuchert and in moments where the team needed goals.
And this really feels like an issue with Cedric Teuchert with confidence at this point. It's not skill. It's not getting in the right position. This is a confidence issue to me. There's something going on there that we have seen this before in the history of St. Louis City. Unfortunately, with Klaus, namely last year, it was a confidence issue. It was a striker's mentality issue, and you get this opportunity in space. The onus goes completely off of Olaf Melberg, of Lutz Van Stiel, of Diego Gigliani, all of that. And it goes right into this one moment can change the course of the game, and it's all up to the individual player. Cedric Teuchert no doubt feels terrible about this miss, but I don't know what else to point to beyond a confidence issue. If you get that positioning 1v1, the Apple announcers were spot on. You have to finish. You have to make this. You have to convert because you're never going to get a better chance. You look at the stats on this one and you see 0.63 xg, 0.76 expected goals on target, meaning he put the ball in an okay area as far as where he chose to shoot. He waited way too long. He allowed the space to close. He didn't have the confidence to take the shot in a better timing area, and it just didn't work. He didn't need help. It was 1v1 with the keeper. There's nothing else to say about this one. So it's just really unfortunate. Aaron Leak in the chat, the yips. It's hard to describe it as any other way. And so once this happened, it wasn't very long until Colorado really made us pay for this. So this was a momentum killer, if anything, because those opportunities at 12 and 13, the Klaus at 32, Toy Shirt now at 37, you fail to convert on these and you're going to lose momentum. You're going to cost your team some potentiality to really make your mark in this game. And it happened at 41. Unfortunately, it happened very quickly after this. St. Louis really didn't get another chance to come back into this game. So let's take a look at the 41-minute goal by Darren Yappy. It happened on a left to right play where Colorado possessed the ball out of their back left, played the ball over the top, just a couple dink passes over the top. Loose balls they recovered on the right side, and they played it up to Ted Kude-Pietro, earning his first start. Kude-Pietro worked it in on Conrad Wallem, and then passed to one of the Bassett brothers, Cole Bassett's brother, but it was intercepted by Darren Yappy, and then the space that Yappy had created in front of Yarrow, and I'm going to let this play on our live stream, but the space that Yappy had created in front of Yarrow is the reason this goal happened. If you watch the defensive work by the back line in transition here, it's the zonal marking that we're used to. It's what we talked about last Wednesday. City was guarding space. Yarrow was guarding the individual Darren Yappy in his space. And it was this space right here that you look at and you see Baumgartel's watching space. He's making sure there's no runners. Akil Watts is back there. Josh Yarrow is covering Darren Yappy, but giving him so much space individually. So he's allowing that space to exist conceivably so he can close it if the ball is played in. But once the ball is played in, it's played in so far behind Yappy that he's able to create just a little bit more space in that area. And once he's able to gather it and to settle it, Yarrow didn't have much of a chance to be able to make a really quality play on it. And in fact, the space that Yarrow allowed really allowed Yappy to get the deflection because it was a deflected shot. But, that space that existed that Yarrow wasn't able to close in on, that's kind of how this was allowed to happen.
Yeah, he made the best out of the space he had. He had his back against the goal, but had enough time to turn and take the shot. The shot ended deflecting on Yarrow, and in the end, that was the goal for Colorado. But something I wanted to point out. City was defending higher yesterday, but due to that, Colorado, with a few quick passes, was able to break that defensive structure. And in the end, City was caught coming back and trying to settle in the box, and as a result, there was a lot of space. And Darren Yappy was clinical with the finish, with a little help from Yarrow with the deflection. But it's the story of the game. You don't score on your clear chance, which, by the way, that XG on Seti's chance was almost the whole XG for Colorado in the whole game.
Oof. I did not make that connection, and I wish you hadn't. That's notable. I mean, Colorado's scoring on this goal. They had a few other chances, so that speaks to how high quality that chance was for Cedric Toyshirt and just the absolute tragedy of the miss. We actually were pretty even on possession in that first half. We had 1 of 6 shots on target. Colorado had 2 of 7. So it's one of those things where we missed our chance, we missed our opportunity, and because we couldn't really find anything as an answer at the end of the first half, we went into that one down 1. After halftime, we started to make a couple changes. We had a decent opportunity in the second half, but nothing massively notable occurred in the second half. there's a halftime sub. Salio came in for Akil Watts, moved Conrad Wallem over to the right side. Cedric Toyshirt had another good chance at 47, a good opportunity on a ball played in by Klaus, but the angle in transition really wasn't there. He was kind of fading over to the right side, and he had a shot that went just wide, or it was just tapped by the keeper. Didn't have a whole lot of bite to that one. And that was kind of the story. There's a few opportunities created by City in the second half, not a lot of bite to them. Berkey had a great save at 53 on a Coup de Pietro shot. Darren Yappy almost had another goal at 60, where Kyle Hebert made a pretty good defensive play, closing that space and preventing Darren Yappy from actually getting an opportunity to take a shot. And by the time he did have an opportunity, Berkey was on top of him. So that was a good collaborative defensive play at 60 to keep it within one goal. 61, that coveted last 30 minutes spot for St. Louis City. Simon Betcher came in for Klaus. Marcel Hartl at 65 had probably the best chance of the entire half, dribbling through defenders, creating for himself, but then sent the shot high. 70 minutes, you have Ostrak come in for Cedric Toyshirt, which doesn't really change a whole lot as far as the shape goes. It just it makes Ostrak more of an attacker, whereas we had seen him this season under Olaf more as a 6. At 77, Ostrak himself had an opportunity, a nice dribble in, taking it himself, but a weak shot at the keeper. 81 minutes, we had our last couple subs. Jay Reed and Jean de Silva came in for Kyle Hebert and JGR, where Reed took the left center back role next to Wallem, and Jean de Silva was more of an advanced right midfielder that moved Tomas Ostrak back to the 6. All of this happened, these changes. The only positive we can say in the second half for St. Louis City is that we didn't allow a goal. And that does get to the narrative that had been building for this group, the Kyle Hebert, Timo Baumgartel, Josh Yarrow, Akil Watts group, of allowing goals late in the game, and the correlation that I drew last week to Simon Betcher. Nothing different happened defensively. You saw that, like you said, Santi, a high line continued by St. Louis. You saw a couple chances, though nothing of anywhere near the quality we would hope. And outside of maybe that Toyshirt 47 minutes, the Ostrak shot at 77, I would say he had the angle, he had the space, but he was dribbling himself and just didn't have the firepower or the accuracy to get it past the keeper. Beyond that, nothing of note. Did you make any other notes in the second half that really give you a reason to be excited for this group and how they responded to this being down 1-0?
Just that play by Marcel Hartl on the 65th minute that he created himself. And in the end, he had choices. He had players to his right and to his left, but he decided to take the shot. And in terms of choices for a shot, it wasn't the best, and you could see him like regretting after the play. But I think at that point, like, and you could also see it on Thomas Ostrak play towards the end, like it looks like the team is in desperation mode and guys want to do things themselves, and yeah, they can create the spaces and get an opportunity, but the team is not closing those chances when they are created, and it's not making the best decisions on the final third. So that's something I noticed on that second half. Like it was like desperation mode and players wanting to do just things by themselves instead of playing collectively.
The stats at the end of this game, they're not terrible from a City perspective. If you just look at the stats, you say, oh, this was a team that looked like they created. They just weren't lucky in finding accurate shots. 53% possession to City. They had 13 shots, though only one was on target. Colorado had 5 of 11 shots on target. City had plenty of final third entries, 52 to 61. So the difference in final third entries wasn't massive. Colorado outpassed City in the final thirds, 95 to 67. So the takeaway that I have in the passing and in the possession is City was still not able to effectively turn their higher possession into actual time spent in the final third, whether it's entries into the final third, passes within the final third, because we know City is not a team that really has any desire to pass in the final third. They go more direct to goal. So with this, where do we go from here, Santi? I think what I want to look at is a few of the big takeaways. Before we get into kind of the biggest of takeaways, I just have to wax whatever the opposite of poetic is about our second half passing network. We love to talk about our passing networks on here. If you're looking on our live stream, you can see what this looks like. If you're not, then you're probably luckier, to be honest. second half passing network was one of the most abominable passing networks I can recall seeing, where the width of our team was there, the connection was not there, the verticality was not there, the danger was not there, and you had so many players really just conglomerated over on that left side. There was just no connection from our right to our mid to our left. And you could look to personnel, you could look to stats. This was after Salio had come in for Keel Watts. And so you're looking at Salio on the left, Conrad Wallem on the right at this point in time. This was an embarrassing looking passing network map. And St. Louis has to do a better job. The players have to do a better job in getting themselves in better positioning. And I don't know if this speaks to a coaching tactics, an assistant coaching tactics, a player comfortability on the field, taking what they're being given. What do you make of this?
Yeah, too many players on that left side, and at times I could tell Celio and Hardel were too close, and to me, it looks like they were on each other's way. And Celio is good when he's isolated on the 1v1, but if he doesn't have a space
Yeah.
to do that, you lose all that good things that he can bring, and all those 1v1s and surprise. And he had a couple during that second half where he was isolated and he created a space, but a lot of times too many people around him, too many players just on his way, teammates, and that wasn't good at all. And the team needs more balance when it is attacking. It loses all the surprise when everybody's on the left, and Colorado knows what to expect.
Probably one of the bigger takeaways when it comes to the players is there's no spontaneity, there's no surprise, there's no creativity in what they're doing to take the opposition by surprise, to take them off guard, and to create something out of nothing. Those aren't there. So we have another loss to look at here. We have another big picture of where do we go from here. It's a game where a couple moments make all the difference. Toy Shirt shot in the first, Hartle's opportunity in the second. When you don't create a ton, you have to rely on those high XG, those high quality opportunities that you do create for yourself. And when you don't finish them, the entire narrative changes. This game would be looked at much more obviously with a win, much more positive if Cedric Toyshirt had finished that goal in the first half. If Hartle had finished and we had won 2-1, for instance, we'd still be frustrated by our lack of creation if those two shots turned into goals, but they were two of our only quality shots that we had generated. But it would have glossed over a few things. And that's kind of the nature of our entire season so far, is we're not creating a ton, but we're finishing even worse than that. And so when you don't create, if you don't finish, everything falls apart. And the things that could gloss over poor coaching, poor tactics by high quality play on the field, that's not happening. And so everything becomes under a microscope at this point. Olaf Melberg's job would be much more secure if the players on the field were supporting him and finishing their chances and playing with a little bit more individual quality. Now, that's part of the conversation that we'll get into, so I don't want to spoil that in just a moment. But this was also a game where we ran out the same exact defensive backline. We ran out the same attacking trio that we've been trying to run out over the course of the month plus. Like we mentioned at the beginning, the midfield has evolved, has changed a little bit as players have come back, but this is a backline that continues to fail us in key moments. We mentioned the positive that they didn't allow a goal in the last 30 minutes of the game. That was great, but the one key moment made all the difference, and that was a backline failure. So the silver lining of no goals late, it's you have to laugh almost to think about that because of yet another defensive mistake.
Yeah, it's disappointing to lose a game like that, especially when you had that clear chance to change it. But back to what you were saying about lineup being similar, same guys on the defensive third, and same guys on the offensive roles. Like at one point, if it is not working, you have to start tweaking things, and maybe you could see Salinski, even see what Michael Wenzel can give you. He was on the bench yesterday, and then we have been talking about this a little bit. See what a starting 11 with Celio and Jande can give you, but I don't
Mhm.
know if we will see this after during Olaf Smelberg's tenure, which we don't know how long that's gonna last.
And well, the let me go back to your first point. The lineup, especially with the attack, is where you have a lot of obvious flexibility. A lot of the arguments I was making last week deal with being more creative. Even on match day, I was arguing you had three other options that I could think of that you could mix and match with your back line. You actually have four after seeing Jay Reed slide in at left center back last night. So you have Jay Reed, you have Joey Zielinski, you have Jake Girdwood Reich, and you have Chris Durkin. So I understand that you're lacking in your central midfield, but you do have options on the back line. Whether you want to go down that creative path or not, and you're content with saying we like JGR at midfield, we're not going to mess with that. We like Chris Durkin at midfield. He doesn't play much center back. He hasn't, and the reason I mentioned Chris Durkin is because he played center back for us last year under John Hackworth. He moved into that, didn't play it a lot, so I don't want to oversell this, but the capability is there. The creativity could be there. And that's what I think we're getting at is whether it's an easier option like Joey Zielinski or Jay Reed on the right or left sides respectively, or you pull JGR down to play center back for the first time under City. He's played it a lot at Sydney, so he's got plenty of familiarity with that. The idea is that it doesn't matter if you're keeping a clean sheet for 89 minutes. You have this one moment that you now draw parallels to, and you're able to create, you're still sustaining this narrative that things are going wrong during the course of games for this back line. And it is the definition of insanity to try the same things over and over and over and expect different results when you have nothing to base that off of. We could say the exact same things about the attack. To your point, you have more obvious options in the attack to change things up. I think Cedric Toyshirt, Klaus, and Marcel Hartl are everyday starters for City. This is not an everyday starting situation where we are right now, winless in 11 league matches in a row. This is a throw anything you can to change things up, see what else you have, because these players, especially if you're talking about a confidence issue, if you're talking about the mentality as opposed to fitness and quality of the individual player, this is where they need a break. You could look at it on multiple matches in a given week. You can look at it as just a run of bad form in a few games. This is where those players need a break. They need refreshing. Take Toyshirt out for a game or two. Let him sit. Put Silva in there, who needs more time in an advanced position. Bringing in John De Silva to play a right midfield position doesn't get the most out of him. I don't know what we're doing with that. What the purpose of keeping John De Silva? It's almost like when Nico Gioacchini played for Orlando prior to us getting him, he didn't do anything. He was just put on the field, put in a position to fail, and then we were able to scoop him up and put him in a better position. That's what I feel is happening with Jean De Silva right now. In the time that we've seen him, which hasn't been much and isn't enough so far, we're not seeing him in his best position. I think he's only played one game, I want to say the Union Omaha match, where he was actually in that advanced right position, where he was able to break lines. We saw it against Minnesota, where he's out there on that right wing in space, receiving a long pass from Roman Berkey, using his speed to get behind the line, passing it in to a wide open Cedric Toyshirt who couldn't finish. That was John De Silva in an advanced position in what he's capable of. So if you're not getting the results from Klaus, Hartl, and Toyshirt, you don't have to take all three of them out, but why are you continuing to run all three of them in the game when they're not producing? If you see this result from Toyshirt, you saw it against Minnesota, and you could write it off saying, oh, that's a bad miss. We know he's capable of more. This happens against Colorado. Give him a break. I understand that we have a week of rest and anything can happen in a week, but just change that out at the very least. Put Salio in if you need to mix and match something else, but Seti needs a little bit of a reset, it seems, at the very least. I'm fine with Klaus as the holding forward, the holding striker, center forward, playing off of Salio and Silva. I would love to see that, honestly. But we have more and better options in the attack than we do on the defensive side right now. So while I wax about just being creative in the back line and trying something different, that's a little bit of a stretch because we're already scraping the barrel in our normal center backs. The attack is a different story. You have options. You brought in Silva as your centerpiece final signing of this last transfer window. Make better use
use Silva, and seeing Klaus, Silva, and Celio at some point will be great. See what that trio can give you. And at this point, even though you have you have Toishar, Hartel, Klaus, enough quality to start. If that's not delivering, you have to start looking at these other possible combinations and see when you can start getting points. But doing more of the same during this stretch has proven that it hasn't been a good recipe for success for the team. We'll see if against San Jose we see some changes. We'll see what happens between now and the game against San Jose too.
And that's the last story that we have to follow is with one match remaining in this important month of May, 6 league matches in May, 2 Open Cup matches. We have accrued 1 point in the league and we have exited the US Open Cup. That 1 point was a draw that felt like a loss against Sporting KC. This has been an abysmal month of soccer that has continued a trend of abysmal months of soccer in 2025 for St. Louis City SC. Santi, the last takeaway I have is we cannot keep doing this. And I'm not talking about you and me post game. We can't keep talking about losses, even though it feels like that should be something that we just, for our own sanity, we just cannot keep doing. Olaf's got to go at this point. I don't see a way that he can come back from this. The head coach. So take a step back for a second. I talked last week about needing accountability. That was my theme of last week's pod is we need some kind of accountability. And it starts from the ownership level. It comes down through Diego. It comes down through Lutz. And it comes down to Olaf. If we are not willing to make those boots on the ground changes to affect real change in the play of our players, and I'm talking assistants, I'm talking about the sporting staff on the field, wherever that may be, if we haven't been willing to make those kinds of changes after seeing no progression, really no improvement at all on any phase of our game. You see some individual players that are like, oh, it's good to see JGR out there get a run. I'm glad Durkin's back. Quality individual performances have not been there, and they haven't improved at all under this coach, under this staff. If you're not willing, and we haven't been willing to make one of those more boots on the ground, assistant staff type changes, then yeah, that next level, the buck stops with Olaf. If in being unwilling to make any of those changes collaboratively with Lutz or otherwise, it's fallen now to Olaf in the fact that he's not getting the most out of the players. He's continuing to go to the same well in where he puts the players on the field, in not trying anything creative. If this this game in particular, after our stretch of getting out of the Open Cup, after with the full week rest ahead of us and the full week of preparation ahead of us, this was the match I was targeting and saying, if we can't win this after having bounced out of the Open Cup, then yeah, it's time. It's time to make a move, because especially if we're not seeing anything different, that's the biggest thing. If we were seeing improvement, then, and at least something different tried that was showing signs of possible success, I might be able to give a little bit more grace. But I'm not seeing anything about that. I'm seeing the exact same tactics. I'm seeing the exact same subs come in, the exact same players in the exact same positions, no creativity. And it's not like it has to come out of nowhere. This is why I was pointing to the staff too. This could have been a progression in and of itself. If you're not seeing anything through the month of April into May, use film session, use the limited time you have on the field to get players comfortable playing a slightly different position. The ship has sailed on the whole comments that Olaf made preseason about taking the best quality players and adapting the system so that they could be successful, adapting where they are on the field, what kind of formation you have. All of that is smoke and mirrors at this point. I'm over it. I'm not seeing it, and it's nothing that I can believe is actually going to happen, because that hasn't changed a single bit over the course of these 15 MLS games. And if Olaf isn't getting the most out of his players, if he's not willing to make these changes, if he's not willing to adjust, if he's not willing to do anything differently over the course of these games and just hoping that it's going to right itself, we can't wait for Olaf to get Henry Kessler, Joachim Nilsson, Jonas Horn, and Thomas Totland back. I fully understand about the defensive issues that we're having. This match here is a good example of how that isn't the only issue. And you can focus, and you should focus on different things depending on each game. The problem is there's no positive things to focus on that can pull us into the win column. Injuries and missing players are an excuse if they are the direct cause of certain things. Josh Yarrow, with the spacing in this one position, this is an opportunity to change the back line of your personnel, get a little bit creative, move Baumgartel into central center back, put Zelensky at right center back. There are options that you have there, but another scoreless match, another match where we're failing to convert on easy opportunities that speak to Olaf Melberg being able to get the most out of his players, putting them in consistent positions to win, and taking things that happen on the field and adapting in future games based on what has happened. You can't put SETI on him. You can't put the SETI miss on Olaf, but this is just another trend. And at some point, just like last year, the player's responsibility in performing is going to cost the coach his job. And this entire conversation, every single nuance, every single piece of this puzzle that has developed over the course of the past 2 or 3 months, from the player's performance to the coach's tactics, adaptability, adjustments, it's all led to the fact that we need a change
Yeah, and you
now.
could argue, say, well, Olaf wasn't out there shooting. It was Seti that had that chance. Or same thing,
Mm-hmm.
Olaf is not out there defending when there are a couple of minutes when there is a defensive lapse and a player is given too much space. But it's on him to make the adjustments to avoid for that to happen. If you continue going with the same guys and not trying to shake things up and see what other guys can do, and if you can have different solutions to another group of players, it's on him too. So yeah, he's not playing, I get it, but he's making the decisions for this thing to continue going over and over and not change it at all.
That's right. The last thing on this one is Olaf is directly in the crosshairs, much more so. And I think you're going to find very few people who can actually defend him. You can find people who shift the focus, talk about the players, but the other person at the forefront of this conversation is Lutz Pfannenstiel. Where does Lutz fall into all of this? He evaluated and put the roster together. A question of Life of Brian 9 over on Instagram. And that is a different conversation to me than what we're seeing right now. I'm not going to argue that Lutz has to stay, but all of the concerns that I just brought up, as far as changes you're making with this roster on the field, from a lineup perspective, putting players in positions to win, learning from your mistakes and changing something, the tactics themselves that have been failures over the course of the season, Lutz doesn't control any of that. Lutz built the roster that is mostly injured at this point. What you can be frustrated with is that the players who are underperforming were Lutz's players. So you don't have Cedric Teuscher, Klaus, Marcel Hartl lighting up the world when they were brought in to be goal scorers, to facilitate goals. That hasn't happened with consistency so far this year. And so you could be frustrated with Lutz on that, but I go back to the fact that they were pretty consistent at the end of last year in their goal scoring. So that's why I draw the ire more closely to Olaf Melberg at this point, even though Lutz does need to be in the conversation, because you're getting to a point now where you're deep enough into the season, Santi, that the summer transfer window workings are happening. Those conversations are being had. Lutz is looking at who to bring in and how to mold this roster to be successful. If you don't know who your coach is, it's going to implement this. That's a problem. But if you're continuing to give the keys to Lutz, you're trusting him that you do believe in this roster and you believe in what he can do this summer to improve that. As the weeks go by and we get into June, your ability to move Lutz and still make an impactful summer transfer window diminishes pretty significantly, because you're going to be asking you're not going to be asking Diego. You're going to be asking a temporary sporting director or somebody who doesn't. You're not likely to bring in a new sporting director to make those changes the further on you go. And if you're not able to do that, and then you're either sticking with Lutz or you're asking somebody within the organization who shouldn't be making those kinds of decisions to make those decisions. Either way, bad situations all around. So if you're not going to pull the trigger on Lutz, which I don't know that would accomplish much at this stage in the game, I think that, to me, Shanti, that's more of a long-term thought. If our organization, with Lutz contract expiring at the end of 2026, if our organization, it being Diego and the Taylors, if they think that Lutz isn't the right vision and they want to pull that trigger, we as a fan base have to buckle up, because it's going to be a long road to reshape this roster under a different sporting director if you make a knee-jerk move like that without having some kind of succession plan in place, without having an idea of who you want to be reshaping your roster. That is that's a worrisome conversation because of how long that could take. Multiple transfer windows, turning over the roster with expiring contracts, changing potentially the style of play. Lot of depth to that conversation that involves what would happen if you
Yeah,
were
that's
to
definitely
dismiss those.
more long term if you were to do that now. Yeah, you're basically signing up for this is it for the 2025 season, and you start the restructuring. I'm not sure if that's the way the team is gonna go. I'm not even sure if it's gonna make changes at this point. To me, it's like if you make a change now, if you change the coach and go with somebody interim, like you are giving, to me, is you are still giving up on the season because you don't have your
Mm-hmm.
new coach in place, and that new coach may not
Yeah.
be able to impact what happens in the summer window. So it's just a difficult place to be. And if a decision, let's say a decision is made this week, this upcoming week,
Mm-hmm.
why could you not have made that decision 2 3 weeks ago when you had more games to play, more chances to turn things around? To me, it's a little late at this point. 15 games into a season, almost half of it, the team keeps distancing itself from playoff positions. So at this point, I'm not sure what will be good. I'm not even sure, Matt.
It's a rip the band-aid off situation for me. I haven't seen anything near reassuring in the past few weeks that lead me to believe that sticking with this plan and with this coach is going to do anything. And so it is that because the longer you go, the less you have to work with, and the more you're seeing. All right, the staff is really just saying we think he can turn this around. We think he can improve. I don't know what data they have to show for that. That's why I'm saying you have to just rip the band-aid off and go a different direction now. We're not the only team that's struggling. So we look around the league. You see, obviously, the LA Galaxy, who just re-signed Greg Vanney as their head coach a couple weeks ago to an extension, a longer-term deal. They're still winless this season. They're the only team that is preventing us from being the bottom of the West. Over in the East, you still have an underperforming Atlanta United team that spent like $45 million on their attacking signings this offseason. And they have the same amount of points that we do, 11 points. Now they've only played 14 so far as we record this, but they play Sunday night soccer. They're doing terribly as well. We are not the only team that's struggling. Doesn't make any of it better. And it doesn't mean we should be settling just because you have an Atlanta United team that you could say, oh, well, we're doing as bad as them and they spent all this money. It's not that bad for St. Louis. We shouldn't be expecting that comparison. We should be expecting the comparisons of the teams that are like Colorado Rapids or the teams that are San Diego, Minnesota, having continued success. That's the echelon of teams we should be in, not finding excuses of this team spent more, but they have the same amount of points. That's not us. That's not our identity and our DNA, and we don't want that. So St. Louis does have a full week of rest ahead. It's necessary for the players, I would say. Got to get the minds right at this point. We talked about the mental load for the strikers, Seti, and all these players just having this to deal with. It's going to come this week with a lot of scrutiny by fans. Santi, we head into the Memorial Day holiday entrenched in 14th place with 11 points in 15 games and a 2-8-5 record with a -9 goal differential. We could beat this dead horse into the ground about the lack of progress we've seen. Do we think St. Louis makes a move on a holiday weekend, and does that play into it? I joked to a few people on Saturday that, oh, if even if we expect a move after this game, if we lose, I don't know if we expect it on Monday because it's a holiday. Is the organization going to are they going to make their
Mm.
employees work and do that? Are they going to do this quietly and then announce it on Tuesday? And we talk about if they don't, then what does that mean? But it means fans are going to continue to have less and less faith in the leadership of the organization to actually make a move that can improve because we're not seeing any progress. And so, like I said, it's time to rip the band-aid
Yeah,
off.
yeah, time to do something to turn around this season. I was looking, Matt, I was looking at results and the table. So City didn't score last night, so it stays at 11 goals.
Mm-hmm.
Both Montreal and Austin score, so they are now at 10 goals. What is baffling to me is that Austin, with 10 goals scored, just one fewer goal than City, has 19 points. and it's in playoff positions.
Yeah, we talked about this before the game. I think that in our chats that if we hadn't allowed any of these goals after 60 minutes, if our defense hadn't gone porous, despite our lack of attacking bite, we'd be fighting for a playoff spot in that ninth spot, in ninth, 10th. So both sides of the ball fail us, and the comparisons, you could say we're not doing as bad as in the attack as other teams who are more successful in the table, but when you're failing on both ends, you're going to end up in 14th place like we are. We go from here playing San Jose next week. It's a 1:30 p.m. kickoff on Saturday, May 31st. And who knows what this City team will look like at that point. We hope that Edu Leuven can play and is available with this being a home match. But we don't know if we're going to get the same coaching staff. And if we don't, how much apathy there will be from fans, how much frustration there'll be by supporter groups, because it's all warranted at this point, Santi. All the ire, all the frustration, the lack of action on any front, coaching staff, adjustments, changes, trying new things, front office doing anything other than Lutz going on KMOX every Sunday and saying, I'm disappointed, I'm frustrated. Without action, the words start to become a little less meaningful. And that's a frustrating position for us to be in as fans. Any final words before we get out of here, Santi?
No, just happy Memorial Day to everybody. We'll see if there are some news between now and Monday. If not, we may have to wait until Tuesday when the team comes back to training and front office also comes back to work.
That's right. Enjoy your holiday weekend, however you choose to celebrate it. We'll be back later this week to cover any news that might be there that come out of the holiday weekend. But at the very least, we'll be covering training, and we'll be having our preview pod later this week for the San Jose Earthquake. For Santiago Beltran, my name is Matt Baker. Thank you for joining us on Flyover Footy.
Vamos,
we'll
City.
Talk to you later. All right, we're out. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Enjoy your holiday. A couple questions I didn't get to on the pod recording. There was one over, with all the center back depth issues, why is Olaf so stubborn with a back three? A switch to a back four might help cover the depth issues, asked by Dr. Funk 4747. Could get Yarrow off the field. I think it's because Olaf doesn't trust our players with two center backs on the field. He's gone to a back four at times here recently, but it's a back four where Timo Baumgartel is your right back. And so he's just playing a more advanced role, and you try to get numbers higher. In general, though, I do think that it's with the quality that we have. He doesn't trust Kyle Hebert and Josh Yarrow, for instance, to be by themselves as center backs. Doesn't trust Yarrow and Baumgartel, Hebert and Baumgartel, whoever it may be. And so it's a volume thing with a lack of individual quality. That's my take. And that goes back into the conversation of trying other players like Zelensky, but we didn't even talk about Michael Wenzel in this game because he wasn't used, and he continues to be referred to as kind of stopping and starting by Olaf on the injury front. Who knows what's happening really with Michael Wenzel? But that's my take on why we don't go to a pure four-man back line.
Yeah, maybe when Kessler is back, maybe he'll be willing to try that. But
Kessler and Baumgartel, you never know. You never know if he'll get the opportunity too. Because like we said, can't at this point with how terrible things are on both sides of the ball, both sides of the line, you can't, I don't think you can give Olaf much more time. I don't see things in our attack materially changing by getting Thomas Totland back. You might balance the field out, but the ship has sailed.
We'll find out.
We'll see. Happy Memorial Day weekend, folks.